What up, everybody? It's Nate and Ian and Tom here playing some more Bloodborne. What's
Gang's
going
all
on,
back
fellas?
together.
Yeah, full roster here today. What's going on, everybody? Guys, how you doing?
Doing
Doing good.
good on audio. I
Yeah.
see the black square issue you're talking about now, Nate.
Yeah,
It's
can you
it's
see it?
just
Okay.
yeah. You probably just want to turn it to invisible.
I'll just take it off there. Okay, cool. Yep, that's the kind of day I've been having here, folks. It started first thing in the morning when I walked into the office, and it hasn't fucking stopped. Man.
So now we decide to play. You're finding solace in the world of Bloodborne. You're
Yes,
finding
exactly.
peace in Yharnam.
I'm hoping to soothe my frustrations by playing some Bloodborne.
Yeah.
At least in this setting, it's supposed to be frustrating. You expect that when you go into it. It's like a Sectori. I know I'm not gonna live, but I still play it anyway.
At least I'm doing what's supposed to be.
Are we sure that professional world is also not just meant to be frustrating? Are we sure?
Oh,
that
it
that's
is.
Not...
I mean that goes inside the whole capitalist corporation rant, but literally all of work is just sending emails to bother other people until it goes down the chain. That's all it is.
I'm pretty sure it is on purpose. I'm pretty sure
everything has. Well, what are they? Someone called it something really smart. Joyless urgency. That's what it all is.
Joyless
it's urgency for the sake of urgency. None of it's actually important. It's just that's how it's handed down to you, and that's how it trickles down, Reagan style.
I was
Not
actually
useful at all.
I was actually thinking recently. I don't think I have genuinely, actually laughed at work.
Ever?
Maybe ever? Like definitely for like 15 years. Like
oh yeah, yeah.
In living memory, I can't genuinely think of a moment where I have genuinely, actually, like for real laughed.
Man,
ever.
Oh, that's both
I remember
sad
the last
and
time.
relatable.
The last time I laughed, I got very lucky when I was working at my first dev job. I had a couple of interns who were there for QA testing, but they wanted to be devs. And I got very lucky one year because I used to be the go-to trainer person because I was the most amicable person that would actually explain shit in a way that made sense. So I usually got the, that season's batch of interns. And one time I had like 3 or 4 of them who I guess like knew each other from classes at UC before they came here. We used to have a group chat between me and them that was just us. And I remember one time I came back to my desk and they're just talking about something. I don't know if it was like wrestling or what, but they're just saying stuff like, no, dude, like Art could take Bill like in an instant. He would suplex his ass. He's like, no, dude, Bill's fucking washed. Like, you don't understand the power level we're dealing with here. I'm like, what the fuck show are you guys talking about? And they're like, oh, we're not talking about a show. We're talking about whose dad could beat up whose dad. And like cut to me like 5 minutes later, my head is on my desk because I'm crying laughing at how fucking absurd it was to see that on Microsoft Teams. My team lead like leans over, he's like, are you doing all right? And I had to cycle through laughter like, yeah, no, I'm good. I got completely T-boned by whatever the fuck conversation I just spawned into. What the fuck? And they would talk about shit like that every day, and I would just like come in there and I'd be like, what are you guys like doing outside of work? It's like, well, it's internship, so like nothing really. That's pretty much it.
God, I love that so much.
I wish I had like a transcript of it because the way they worded it literally I could not have figured that out unless they told me. I was just like, what? How? They knew each other for maybe 3 months, and already this was a topic they were talking about.
Hilarious.
Wild.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'll tell you what. I think I got a little of that by proxy from you. That made me laugh. That sort of perked me back up a little bit. I won't lie. I was coming into this like a little gritted teeth,
I appreciate that my deeply depressing, horribly dystopian question actually turned out to result in some laughter.
There's a little good in this world.
Yeah. I will say it is rare to have a genuine like laugh at work. So the few moments that I've had, I definitely do remember because that was a time where it was like, this isn't me laughing to mask through this interaction. This is me genuinely laughing because it was actually funny.
Yeah, that's rare, man.
Yeah. I have fake laughed a lot. To admit, but I genuinely can't remember a single moment. I guess to the point where it's like it has to have happened at some point. but
Yeah.
I genuinely cannot conjure a memory of it ever having happened in my entire career, which I suppose does say quite a bit about what we do every day here on planet Earth.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Really.
I mean,
I guess you're in good company. Like, yeah, you are not alone.
Oh no.
I will say I am fortunate enough to know that I have my current situation is very good. I laugh frequently at work because both my direct team and greater team are both pretty funny, and you know we're doing the best we can. We're kind of in the midst of being in the shit, but we're kind of trauma bonding together, so it's working out all right. Um, but I have been at jobs where I'm like, none of this is like remotely enjoyable. So
Well,
not recently, but I do sympathize and empathize.
I envy you.
Yeah, I now that I've had, my last team that I was at was super funny. I still talk to them on occasion. And then this current team is pretty great too. So I've been fortunate to have two different projects that are both great people to hang out with. Which is like winning the lottery twice in a row.
All right, well, I hate you both then, because you both like have good.
I think a lot of it has to do with luck and also how people, I think, sort of translate the case of the Mondays type the interactions you have with people, because I also recognize that people do that kind of small talk at work because that's the corporate landscape. It's what they kind of like, it's the only kind of stuff you can really talk about. So it's like I do appreciate when they're making the effort in that way of like it's not interesting, but they're trying to have a positive social interaction, no matter how sanitized it has to be.
Similarly, kind of to that point, I will leave open the possibility and frankly even probability that it's not that nothing funny has ever happened at work. It's very possible that I simply am not capable of laughter at work.
At work, your mindset is that.
Yeah, I think that's genuinely possible. Yeah,
that might be. It's probably a combination of both, I would imagine. So
it's almost like a filmy layer of like this could be funny, but I'm not in the mode.
Yeah,
at work.
Yeah, that's probably gotta be it, right?
Yeah, and I will tell you this, Ian. I don't think I've met another person with more willpower than you. And if you decide you don't want to laugh, no one's gonna make you. And if nobody is inherently explicitly trying to make you laugh, they don't have a fucking chance of doing it on accident either.
Yeah, I am one of those unfortunate, maybe I guess maybe that's the word for it. People who I don't like even funny movies. I don't often laugh out loud. Like it takes a lot to make me laugh out loud, genuinely laugh out loud. And it doesn't mean that the show's not or the movie's not funny. Like oftentimes I'll note something is funny, but I often just won't laugh out loud. Not that I don't ever. There are moments. It does happen. But like
I think it's like the recognition of something being funny. I remember watching a ton of like the syndicated movies Comedy Central would get rights to, and I was like, there's plenty of moments where even like the not great stuff would have moments where I'm like, that's funny, but it's not going to elicit that reaction unless it actually catches me in the way that like something surprisingly is funny.
Yeah, I think there's been only 2 times in recent memory that I can explicitly recall you losing your shit. And one of them was when Cherie wrote that cursive D that looked like a dick.
Yes, I do.
We were at.
I know this story.
Oh my god, Tom! He was last time. I think he and Cherie were in town, and we were sitting around Mom's kitchen table, and I forget why Cherie was doing this, but she wrote this cursive D, and it just straight up looked like a dick and balls. And Ian and I started giggling, and then turned the volume up from there for about 10 minutes straight. It was pretty great.
I think that was the same exchange where I think you told us. I think today, for me at least, remains the best joke.
Oh, which
ever.
one's that?
It's why do ducks have feathers? This is a really dumb joke, by the way, but
I forget what this joke was. What did I say?
To cover their butt quacks.
Oh god.
Oh my god. That does sound
Uh-huh.
It's a
It's a bad joke.
It's a
but
classically bad joke.
For some reason,
entering dad joke territory.
Yeah.
it did work. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was like 4 years ago.
Yep.
So
And then the only other time I can remember at all was I made you laugh, and I was very proud of myself. Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
We were recording Dungeons and Dragons, and
yes,
I made this guy sound like my dog flew away.
yes.
Oh yeah.
And
Yes.
if you,
that one's recorded. I should go find that because that genuinely did.
Oh,
That was,
yeah, and Cameron even cut a lot of it out
Say.
because you started laughing, that made me start laughing, and I think we had to pause for a little while until we could collect ourselves.
I'd be surprised there's not a clip of it somewhere already.
Yeah, well, like it's like the goddamn the beginning of it and the tail end of it is in the episode, but like there's several like real life minutes of us just like melting at the stupid thing that we made ourselves laugh at. So. But yeah, that was a good time too. Those are the only 2 times I've seen you completely break character.
Dragons that really got me, and I remember this one actually. You might remember it too, Nate.
Yeah.
But it was one of the openers because it makes me laugh now because Cameron used to always start every episode by like asking a question that we all would have to answer.
That.
But this time, it was he told you directly to sum up what happened last time.
Oh God! And I completely lost all train of thought.
He made that instantaneous, like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to answer this.
Yep.
And just panic. It was just utter panic in your face. And I could see it immediately because I didn't even need to see it because I knew it was going to be panic. And then I looked at your face and it was very clear panic. And that got me. That killed me too. That's also probably on video.
Yeah, no, that is. I think that is fully on video somewhere. But that was me being suddenly up in front of the class and I have no pants on.
Yeah.
It was that scenario for sure. And I was like, oh fuck, I don't remember.
I knew when he, because the thing is, I would have had the same response if he had asked me. And so I knew as soon as he started asking that question, and as soon as I realized he was asking you directly, I knew you were going to have the same response that I would have had.
Yep.
You definitely did. That was very funny to me. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Maybe it's just things where you do something stupid or are being embarrassed. Maybe that's the only thing that makes me laugh.
I will take a little bit of pride in the fact that I was involved with all 3 of those things that made you laugh.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
My animals make me laugh.
That's true. Your animals are funny.
Yeah, I can see Dabney especially.
Yeah, Jim Dabby makes me laugh. Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing.
Damn this fucking avenue! What the fuck?
He got you with the fucking with
the shit bomb.
Oh my God.
Whatever that
Yeah,
is.
this is like fucking Yancey Street, man. This is
fuck.
I was gonna say I thought it was the torches that were doing you in just because they have it's that same problem with Dark Souls where like they got that no iframe start when they do the thing where they just like torch you. They just like put it forward at you. But I think it's just the collective how many of them are throwing shit plus the one who's up in your face.
Oof. Anyway, I think I'm also just like on fuck it mode and just trying to plow through everybody, and I can't because I'm actually at a place where I'm not over leveled, as far as I know.
I mean, this is nobody likes this area. Generally, the forest in Bloodborne is usually pretty tough.
Is the forest the swamp, basically?
Yeah, kind of. Although there are other swampy areas that definitely suck.
That are actually swamps.
I think in terms of how many, it's not even the strength of their attacks; it's how many of them.
Yeah,
it seems like there's just enough that there's no window to breathe.
Speaking of which, I want more credit, at least from the internet, for my Yancey Street reference.
You want to make sure we call that out, right? Okay.
I want to make sure I get some cred for that. Not a lot of people know.
Get that.
Yeah, I'm not even a Marvel guy, and I know Yancey Street.
Man. Yeah, we're gonna have one person in years from now who's gonna get that. And they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, that was such a deep cut. That's so great."
One person. who
I don't know what it's from.
accidentally clicked on an AH video
Yep.
mid playthrough and happened to have hung out long enough to get to that reference, and who also knows the reference.
I think one day.
Yancey Street is a Yancey Street gang, Tom. It's a recurring group in primarily Fantastic Four, I believe, but also I think makes appearances elsewhere, like everything else in Marvel.
Okay, I figured it was in New York. I mean, it's Marvel, so
Yeah, they're generally like antagonists of the four.
okay.
So it's the Yancey Street gang.
Yeah. And I mean that sounds like a Gangs of New York type of gang.
It does, yeah.
We're the Yancey Street gang, see?
It doesn't, like, if you told me it was Fantastic Four, I'd be like, it doesn't sound like the kind of thing Fantastic Four would fight. I would expect it to be like supernatural, like Silver Surfer shit. But it's kind of like Powerpuff Girls have a couple antagonists that are just like, I mean, I guess if you've got nothing better to do, but like, are you really sure that this is like your grade of people to fight? Like, there's supernatural threats against the world, and you're just like, well, there's these assholes that keep breaking into cars. I guess it's just, beat the shit out of them with our scientific
it's a little
powers.
awkward when you realize that you're not a street level like hero, but yet there's street level crime happening in front of you. Do you bother?
Yeah. I've always wondered that, because I feel like there's the kind of like a power scaling thing with a lot of Marvel and DC heroes about like, are you fighting stuff that threatens the world, or are you fighting stuff that pisses off your neighbors? And I feel like there's probably some heroes that sort of mix between both. Like Spider-Man, I'd say, is probably the best bet for that.
He's probably the strongest street level hero.
Right, yeah, because he handles, I mean, things of like both hemispheres, but like I feel like it's very rare to see, like, Iron Man wouldn't just be like stopping a robbery. I mean, I'm sure he could, but
Isn't that what like Spider-Man does for most of his first like?
I think so, because that's how I like, especially even the Raimi movies even kind of show like, yeah, he's not really fighting like, I mean, like threats local to New York that could be world-ending for sure, but it's never like Spider-Man versus Galactus or some shit until.
Yeah, it's only like when he gets into like the web of destiny that he starts like dealing with existential stuff, or like the King in Black or something. And I don't even think he's like the main deterrent force there. But even he is like, I am so out of my depth. Oh my god.
The Turtles often do like street cleanup.
That is true.
True that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah, good catch.
Where's the tripwire? That's what I want to fucking know.
It's this very Home Alone type traps in the middle of the crowds.
On this side. Fuck, I don't know.
You fuck someone else up with it?
Maybe.
I mean, you probably could, but they'd have to.
What you need to do. You need to aggro somebody, and then go around. Like, go to the right. Yeah, go around this.
Oh, but you have to get them
and get. Okay.
Oh, maybe it's not.
Oh, maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe there's a different
I do like
trigger.
that in games, though. Anytime you can do a Home Alone bit in a game and have it successfully go off, nothing more satisfying. I got to do more of that in Marathon.
Yeah, how is Marathon?
It's good. I haven't played in a little bit, but they've released a PvE mode recently that's actually tough. But it's good. It's a fun game. It's like the only competitive game I really care to play, and I don't really play extraction shooters, but I think what I enjoy about it is it's very easy to let go. If, like clearly you're outmatched, it's kind of like, well, whatever, get them next time. Nothing on me is that important.
So Tom, I don't play Marathon. I probably won't play Marathon, although the PvE edition is like, I might, that could potentially get me in. Here's the thing. I say all that as a predicate to what I'm gonna say next isn't Marathon gonna get canceled soon? Isn't Bungie gonna get shuttered soon?
Well, like that I think is the worry. I mean, obviously, like even like me, who is a pro Marathon person, I don't deny that at any moment they could get the axe from Sony and it could totally go under. They haven't really given much of a roadmap to say like, hey, we know everyone's worried about it. Here's what we're going to do against it. I think right now it's kind of a like, if there's stuff happening internally where Sony's like, this isn't making enough money, they haven't said it, but it's entirely possible. The thing is, I think everyone who is playing it, who enjoys it, is kind of just like let's just play it for as long as we can.
Yeah.
And from there, like no one has heard like a status report about that
Let's
at
just
all.
enjoy it while it lasts. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, at any point, I mean, stuff has been shuttered. Like the Hi-Fi Rush devs, Tango,
Right.
totally just overnight was like, all right, you're done. So
Yeah,
it's entirely possible that it does. I don't think Marathon. I would be happy if it lasts for over a year, if even 2. But I would not be surprised if Bungie is just like, hey, we're not making more Destiny. We have people that play Marathon, but that's not going to be enough to sustain us. So it's either going to be like another big layoff, or it's going to be a complete shuttering, probably.
Because, like, granted, I'm only getting this news filtered through the most negative place on planet Earth, which is the internet.
Right.
So I could be getting the wrong impression generally, but the sense that I am getting is that nobody's really playing Marathon much. Obviously, the people, it's like every other extraction shooter, which is like every other good one anyway. It finds a really devoted player base, but
Yeah.
that player base is like a mile deep and an inch wide.
Yeah.
So
I think
just
that's exactly I think what's going on with Marathon, in the sense that like when I play it, and I will do random matchmaking because I'm a masochist like that. Some of the people that I've matched with, like genuinely, like we don't just talk about like the current like instance of the game. They will talk about like the status of the game itself. I've had that conversation with multiple like randoms that I was not expecting to. That, I mean, like PUBG, I haven't played Tarkov, but games like that, I don't imagine that happens that often. But in Marathon specifically is the one time I've played a competitive shooter or any kind of like somewhat competitive game where people are actually talking about the status of the like the game's health itself.
And this is just speculation on my part, but you'd have to think that most of the people playing Marathon, or at least tangentially, maybe not like hardcore, but at least involved in the Destiny community in some way, shape, or form. Even though obviously it doesn't work the other way. Like not all Destiny players are Marathon players, but a lot of Marathon players are Destiny players, right? So it seems to me like maybe Marathon came with at least some kind of built-in community from the Destiny space. So, and you know, a lot of that community like are close to each other. Like they have a specific way of playing. Like they're going to talk to each other more. They're going to do more community stuff together. And obviously Tarkov didn't really have that stuff. I don't know about what was the other one that came out last year that was successful?
Oh,
I feel like I've gone all the way.
The one with like the mechs and what was that one called? It was like you versus mechs, and there was like some little bit of AI in the NPCs or something. Yeah, I can't remember what that was.
I don't remember, like I never played it, but I think it was reasonably successful.
Oh, Arc Raiders, that's what it was.
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me that like that genre was never gonna be like big dollars for Bungie or for Sony. No. And I guess the problem to me comes down to like, I don't think Marathon is a failure. I think if Sony sees it as a failure or Bungie does, I think that's because they expected way more of Marathon than Marathon could ever reasonably deliver.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, my optimistic hope is that was kind of the tempered expectation going into it. Was like, hey, obviously other extraction shooters like Arc Raiders and Tarkov exist. Here's how much numbers they do. But obviously, if that's what we're setting out to create, if that's what we want to do, which because I think originally they did have plans for Marathon to be something like different. Mm-hmm. I think someone early on in the dev cycle was saying, hey, if we make it an extraction shooter, that's what's popular right now. And it's like, right, that's what's popular, but popular isn't necessarily, based on AAA studios or even publishers. That's probably not going to make the money. It will be popular in like literal like popularity, but it's not going to equate to dollars. So it's going to be, it'll make money, but it's not like, as long as they can like tell Sony, like, look, it's not going to be like, the next Souls game. It's not going to make like millions just because of the name alone. If you're okay with that, it's still a source of income, because with all the other shuttering going on, I'm wondering if that's maybe making them think, okay, well, a couple years prior, if Marathon had launched then, they absolutely would have shuttered it, because they would have said, well, this isn't making, it's popular, but it's not making money. Yeah. But I know tons of studios, whether it's Microsoft, Sony, whoever, have been shut down who were making at least some amount of money. I'm wondering if that collective income is now making them think, well, if we keep going, then we're not going to have anything. And piecemeal all that stuff together is what makes our bottom line. So if we keep taking out the big pillars, sure, we're going to have other studios, but they're not going to be making nearly as much as any of these were, even if it's not a ton.
Do we know? I'm sure people do. Was Marathon already in development and greenlit and like down the line before Bungie was acquired by Sony?
I think it was,
It
yes,
must
if
have
I
been.
remember correctly. Well, when was the Sony acquisition? Was like what, 22, 23? I think.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I mean,
I
Jim,
think it was. I think they had the plan. They had the plan to bring Marathon back for a couple years before that. I don't know how far they got in the dev process before the acquisition happened, but I would not be surprised because I remember that first year, all the articles coming out were like, yeah, the vibe at Bungie inside is fucking terrible because of Sony's management style.
like post a release.
God
Yeah,
damn it! Are you
20
fucking kidding me?
Oof.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Yancey Street.
Yeah, it's the fire bombs. That's a ton. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
that is.
Yeah.
That's what that other waterway or that backway is for.
This dude
Yeah.
I
has
feel like I killed the entire woods there for a minute.
You did, yeah.
those dudes had your fucking coordinates though, man. They were radioing in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
One after another.
At first it hit me, I was like, oh shit, and then it kept hitting me, and I was like, oh fuck me, okay.
But I feel like it had to be in development before the Sony sale, because I think Marathon was actually originally slated to be out in like late 2024 because it got delayed, right? Into 2024.
Yeah, it was. I think it was delayed. I mean, for any number of reasons. Obviously, they had the art scandal thing happened as well, which definitely pushed it
Right.
back. I think the thing that I don't remember what the original like concept was. If it was already extraction shooter by the time that first
That was my second question.
teaser dropped.
Was it always an extraction, or did it get changed to an extraction at some point?
That's what I was curious about because I know like the boomer shooter genre has been like on a comeback for a while. It's not like they couldn't have made a single player marathon experience that was something. I mean, in terms of like how the game would play, it would essentially be another Halo like. I think that was part of the reason why they didn't was because Marathon is it's not quite a monomyth the way that Legend of Zelda is, but it is the precursor to Halo. Like a lot of the elements in the original Marathon trilogy end up getting repurposed in Halo. So I think part of it was they weren't sure how to do a single player experience where they weren't rehashing some of that. I mean, obviously they could still tell a different story, but I think part of it was wanting to make something in a genre that was kind of in the zeitgeist. And I guess kind of still is in the way that like roguelikes are, but not everyone plays them. So I think their goal with Marathon was to make something that would be still the IP that they want to make, because creatively Bungie does care about that stuff. But they were like, well, how are we going to get people to play this if it's just a single player experience? Some people might play it, but if it just goes by the wayside, then unfortunately we have to go to the live
They wanted
stream
to make a multiplayer, but they didn't want to make another Destiny, and that left like kind of not very many options.
Right.
So
And the other thing with Marathon too, that same way that Halo did, Halo made, multiplayer shooters like kind of a big deal. And Counter-Strike had its PC equivalent. But Halo was also one of those games where when they make the gun feel the way they do, the same way why Destiny has Gambit and Crucible and all that, the game feel they make with those shooters is so good that it's really hard for them to not want to make a multiplayer mode. But, we're past 2008. There's not really many games that have a campaign plus like a PvP matchmaking. So they're trying to find a way to like find middle ground between that. And I think ultimately, like dollars to dollars, this was their best bet at making something that would be surface level, an extraction shooter that people might play for a bit and not care about, but also something that, fans of their older stuff and the stuff they know how to write well kind of come together. And I understand why. Like it's still, it can be a rough execution. I understand why people are, avoidant of it, because I also don't play many other extraction shooters. I'm playing mostly because I like the setting and the story. But I think they were kind of at a rock and a hard place of, if we're not going to do Destiny again, potentially, I don't think they knew that back when they were announcing the teaser.
Well, so I
think,
haven't trouble with that. Like,
yeah.
Again, this is going to have to be speculation, but that was back in an era when I was playing Destiny.
Right.
And I remember distinctly that, and this is even before the Sony acquisition, Bungie was like really disinterested in doing a Destiny 3. Like they were like pretty definitive, like, yeah, we are not working on a Destiny 3. Don't
Right.
expect a Destiny 3 anytime soon. And like I just wonder why. Why would they just were they hoping that Destiny 2 would just become Destiny and that they wouldn't ever have to update it again? It would just be this like forever game? Or could they not conjure the will among the devs at the studio to like wanna do a Destiny 3? Or did they feel like even then Destiny just was not making enough money? Despite it being profitable, despite it being popular, it still
Right.
wasn't enough. Like, what did they feel like at that time that Destiny itself was still like an opportunity cost and that it prevented them from spending resources and time on something even bigger? And if that's the case, did they really think that Marathon was going to be the thing that was bigger?
Oh,
Like,
I can't imagine. No, and then that's just from speculation from even the launch of the game. I don't think that they thought, just based on how the transactions work between Destiny versus Marathon. I mean, I would have put my 2 cents down to say no. I don't think that they think it's going to replace it. Could it potentially? Maybe, but that would be a complete like. There's no way to guess that because
but then
obviously it would have
it's
to
so
really take
weird.
off, and
'Cause I
nothing
tend
there
to
would do that.
I think it would be batshit crazy for them to think that Marathon
Oh,
was going to
absolutely.
be in
Yeah.
Destiny, right? And so let's assume that that's true and that they didn't believe that they were sane enough to know that Marathon was not going to be their new golden goose. Why then, if that were true, were they not also at the same time trying to like do something good with their golden goose, i.e. Destiny?
Mm.
Like, because Destiny
Yeah.
at the time was like they had abandoned basically the entire multiplayer PvP community. Like they for like 3-4 years there were like getting no new maps, no new gameplay modes. Like they did Gambit was like the one thing that they kind of like threw their
That was
way.
yeah, and that's the only time I played back in 2020. Gambit was like the new thing, and I never heard about anything new coming out besides the expansions in those like 6 years since then.
Yeah, and they just never really invest like for basically the last 4 years of Destiny. They kind of didn't really do a lot of new investment in it. It was always kind of like
Yeah.
petering out for 4 years. It was kind of like wrapping itself up for 4 damn years. That's the way it felt like.
I remember distinctly, Ian, the end of 2020, they had a live stream about what was it, Hard Light, First Light, whatever.
Yeah,
There was like 3 expansions that they were announcing that were coming out, and I was like, oh, cool, maybe I'll get back in for one of
First Light
those.
was when it went free to play.
Right. And I remember like some of them, like I think one of them people really liked, one of them people fucking hated, you know, in the same way that like WoW expansions and like Guild Wars 2 had those moments of like when it hits really well. When it does like okay, it's really doing badly. And I remember right, even before Marathon was like set a release date, I thought Destiny 2 was already over, and then they announced Final Shape.
Yes.
And I was confused because I was like, well, it already seemed like it was winding down by like 22, 23. They said all these articles coming out being like, hey, so this is probably the end of Destiny 2. This is probably the end. And it kept, that was the narrative for years.
That's the thing that I don't understand because like,
right.
Again, let's assume that that's true. What else were they planning to do? If we believe that Destiny was sort of they knew that Destiny was going to be ending at some point soon, whether that's the final shape or something else. Clearly, they were working towards the end of a thing with Destiny 2. And on the side, they're also doing Marathon. And again, if we are assuming that they don't believe that Marathon's going to replace Destiny, then there must be something else that they were planning to do, either a D3 or a brand new, completely other, like, different game. And I just, it's so bizarre to me because basically what they did was they said, we don't want to do Destiny anymore, so no Destiny 3. We want to do this side project, this sort of game jam marathon. But if that's the case, a sane studio the follow-up question to that is, okay, well then what are you going to do? And they just like didn't have an answer. Like, we're not going to do anything. We're going to do Marathon and do nothing else. Like, that's so weird to me. And then they went over to Sony, and like, Sony didn't ask them to do anything else. Like
No.
it's like Sony thought Marathon was going to be the big thing, and clearly Sony was on that sort of like live service kick, and Jim Ryan thought live service was going to be everything, and they wanted all their games to be live service, and it fucked over all their internal studios for a fucking generation. Like even Naughty Dog got infected by the
Yeah, that's
live
right.
service thing,
Yeah.
and like, so some of that is Jim Ryan's fault, I'm sure, but like even then they didn't like reinvest in Destiny 2. Like again, they just like were trying they spent 4 years trying to wrap up Destiny 2 without a replacement for it. And then to me that's like, well then why are you trying to wrap up Destiny 2? Why aren't you just trying to make it go longer? Like let's go longer on Destiny 2, or do a Destiny 3, or do another space shooter, looter shooter, or do a single player game, or like another big thing that's supposed to be your main bread and butter if you're currently trying to kill your main bread and butter. So I do not understand Bungie's behavior going back like 6 years even, like start of the pandemic. It's just so bizarre, and it only got weirder after it went to Sony. So,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I literally was just looking at the Wikipedia article for Bungie, and that's like you said, the live service focus that Sony had. That's the reason why they acquired them in the first
that's what they
place in
said. Yeah.
2022, because they were like, they're so good at live service, we want them to do live service for us.
And then I got
And
the impression that they ended up actually not really using Bungie at all for that.
no, and they didn't. And I think that was part of the problem was when they acquired Bungie. Bungie had Destiny 2, but I think by the time they acquired them, because again, like in 2020, they were already like they hadn't said it then, but they knew that they were like, okay, these next 3 expansions, and then we're gonna start to put like a nightcap on this thing because
Yeah.
we want to work on something different. I think that was part of the problem was when Sony acquired Bungie in 22, in those 2 years, from what I've read, they were trying too many different projects because they wanted to have a successor to Destiny that wasn't they wanted
Yeah,
to do
they were
something different.
just
And the
one of
problem was Sony was like, well, we just want live service. We don't care what it is, but you have to bring us something that makes money. And when
Yeah.
they did that, they spent 2 years trying to find something, but they were like, the problem is we don't know what the future is going to look like under Sony. And then lo and behold, when those layoffs happen, that
Right.
team,
They
that
want
whole
people-
team is required to keep Destiny 2 running. And when they
Yeah.
have those layoffs,
They
all
got
of a
cut
sudden
down
it's like,
so
well,
hard.
now it's even right. It's even less likely that we can even work on Destiny because we don't have those devs. And the people that got laid off probably had a lot of that, like
and
that business knowledge.
with
So
that-
it's like if they want us to make Destiny 3, it's like you want us to make Destiny 3 with 40% less of the workforce.
Right. So that's a really
How
good
are we
point.
going to do that?
Because that actually begs the question. That means then, because I agree with you, that makes total sense to me. Like there was
Right.
a point in 2023-ish where like it didn't matter what Bungie would have wanted after that, because they wouldn't have had the capability
No.
internally because they didn't have enough people.
No.
So, but what that does mean is like it's actually more forgivable that they failed under Sony than that they failed independently. Because like
Yes. Yeah.
they because again this goes back to before they were acquired by Sony. They didn't have a plan then, and they still didn't have a plan. And even if they had come up with a plan under Sony, it was far too late at that point to actually action a plan if they ever had one.
Oh,
to begin
yeah.
with. It seems clearly they didn't.
I think the other thing is also like, Bungie independently is probably the best version of Bungie, but even after like the Microsoft or the Activision Blizzard King acquisition, I think back to the Halo 2 vidocs and stuff about like, yeah, it's a couple guys in the office sleeping overnight and working on stuff. Any company that gets that big or, has to deal with that corporate acquisition, that's going to permanently change the atmosphere forever. So I do think a little bit of it was, okay, we're independent again before the Sony acquisition. Now what do we do? And I think they still spun their wheels independently when they did that. Because I think what happened was they realized we are now a target for these bigger publishers to buy us. We're probably going to get talked to again. What do we make in the meantime? And I think that honestly is probably where a lot of the mistake happened was they didn't have anything ready, because I think like internally they were like, oh, we don't really know. Some of our best people have already left.
There's so much that's weird about the Sony acquisition of Bungie, not least that they ostensibly, explicitly acquired them largely so that they had an in-house live service expert, right? and then they clearly
Right.
didn't use them for that purpose at all once
No.
they acquired them for it. And even stranger, even if that's true and they acquired them with the intention of, using them to help to basically advise on all of their other in-house live service projects, even if that's true, you don't pay $3 billion for that. Like
No.
that, you don't pay $3 billion for a console, right? Like these people, if you're not gonna ask Bungie to actually develop something for you and actually get in there and write code and like develop shit on a day-to-day basis, you could have paid them to consult without owning them. It was
Right.
like,
You could have had it be right.
why they
Sony's
so
Sony's
bizarre.
bloodthirst for owning things, I think, is also part of the problem because
Yes.
consultancy works. That's why I think Dark Souls Miyazaki works well, is because, or even with Kojima, right? Is yes, they're basically owned, but it's also like, hey, give us enough space that like you're not directly telling us what to do. We will show you the stuff, and we can, based on that credit, we can guarantee it. But when they bought Bungie, they were like, no, we are the puppet masters now. Here's what we want from you. And Bungie is like, this never happened to Microsoft. Not in the same way.
The other thing about Bungie's acquisition was like, it seems clear to me like Sony must have gotten a look at their books and in their internals to understand what they were working on.
Yeah.
At the time. And so they must have known that the projects they had in the pipeline were not worth $3 billion on their own.
Yeah.
So why did Sony spend $3 billion to pick up Bungie? And the only theory I have is similar to the point you made, is sort of like Go Fever about acquisitions.
Right.
Money was so cheap at the time, interest rates were so low that effectively it didn't really cost them anything to make this acquisition.
Right.
Because it was basically free money out there.
It was, and I think it's telling of the exact year it happened, right? Because the acquisition happens in 22, which I think is the launch of Embracer Group, when that was still a thing.
Yeah,
and Microsoft, I think at that point, insider knowledge must have been like, hey, Microsoft's going after ABK.
yeah.
Like they already own fucking everybody else. Like Bethesda was already under them, I think, at that point, or was about to be. I think what was happening was this arms race of, if all of the credible like independents or at least big name studios are being bought, we have to buy one of them, and live service is the subscription model. That's what's going to give us money over time to make the next move. But Sony obviously doesn't understand how to do that, so they buy Bungie thinking, they're really good at Destiny, we'll have them do this, and then they realize, oh, you were trying to sunset Destiny. Well, what are you going to do instead? And we can't help you creatively. You have to come up with it for us.
It's just and then we just circle back to the original question. Like, okay, they wanted to sunset Destiny. Bungie clearly wanted to.
Right.
Clearly, Sony knew they were gonna.
So why didn't anybody plan anything at all?
Yes. Right. Why nothing else? Why do you create a vacuum and then not fill it with anything?
I wonder if it's also maybe on Sony's side, if it's not just asset denial. Like, okay,
Maybe.
Don't do anything. We're going to buy you so that way no one else can have you either.
I mean, I definitely got the impression, as speaking as someone who was not really in the community, because I never really played much with other players, but I played a lot of Destiny. And the experience that I had at that time, like post-COVID, was that I feels like Bungie was just really tired of dealing with that community. Like, because it felt like Bungie just really couldn't really do much right. Like the community was never really super happy with any of its releases post-COVID, and it was always like a lot of malcontents and dissatisfaction, and like I just got the sense that the devs had like gotten tired of kind of like babysitting what I think a community that they didn't really like that much. That was just the sense that I had. But even then, it's like, okay, maybe that's true. Let's say, for argument's sake, that it was true. I don't think Bungie or Sony make billion-dollar decisions based on whether or not they don't like the customers. Like, I don't think they give a shit about the customers, whether they like them or not. I think as long as the customers are paying, they can be as shitty as they want. Because at the end of the day, most people at Bungie or Sony aren't dealing with the community. They're paying people to deal with the community.
Right.
So, like, I don't know. It just seemed like it just felt like they just had enough of Destiny 2 and wanted to move on from it. And then it just again, okay, let's say that that's true and you don't want to do Destiny anymore. You're tired of Destiny. But do you just not want to do game dev anymore? Like, because that's what they just didn't do any game dev anymore. They did Marathon, and that was never gonna be as big as Destiny. It just
I
wasn't
think
as big.
I
Unless
think
they
partially
thought it was gonna be. Maybe they did. Maybe they thought Marathon was gonna be as big as Destiny. I don't know.
partially I do think that a little bit of it is obviously it's really hard to have specifics because people really want like strong evidence. I do think it is that. One thing I'll say is I do think when 343 split from Bungie, that did take a decent amount of people, but it wasn't like Destiny 2 suffered after that split, so it was still like doable. I think
Yeah.
at that point, that's why Bungie only ever worked on Destiny 2. They had some prototypes. I think they released an iOS game in the meantime, but
Mhm.
like they were doing Destiny because it was like we have the capacity for Destiny, so let's ride this. I think
Yeah.
the other problem is exactly what you said, Ian, which is MMOs in general, which I would consider Destiny one of those. Destiny is a very unique one because it's a first-person shooter that has those like daily, logins, those quests. When you come to games like I remember playing World of Warcraft since 2010, 2011. A lot of MMOs do have a very serious toxicity problem. Not as bad as MOBAs like League of Legends. Fuck
Mhm.
that game forever. But I remember playing World of Warcraft. The hardest part about playing that game was one, for a tab targeting MMO, it's very hard to keep up with like the news because there's so many different classes and all this content. And there are some savants out there who are just like, oh, can you believe that they nerfed, Righteous Fury? I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. I've never encountered that. And the problem with a lot of what I used to hear, even on general chat in those games, and even from friends I used to do raids with, was this absolute vitriol about like, I can't believe they're doing this to so and so. I can't believe this class is getting nerfed. And because so many MMOs have that mentality of like either this
I
is the
hate
best
all
thing
change.
ever, right, or it's the worst thing ever. And I think the problem was even back in the Halo 2 and Halo 3 days, all they had was, Xbox Live and they had like custom playlists, but Bungie was always very community focused. That's why they were so like, oh, Bungie, when they did stuff right in Destiny 2, fans of the long-term, games from Bungie and even when 343 was still there, were understanding because they were like, right, Bungie cares about the community. It's like, yes, but that's only possible on a certain scale. When you're dealing with MMO people who are used to having either their way or the highway constantly, I don't think any of those devs would have wanted to keep doing it because the other problem is if you keep working on that and you're burnt out as hell and you're trying to keep all these people happy, but the balances and these fixes just they never satisfy them. I don't think anyone at Bungie was prepared to do that. Now, obviously, they hire people from other MMOs, but I don't think that solves the problem because the amount of people that made Destiny possible is not the same scale as Blizzard, right? When Blizzard blew up in 2004 from World of Warcraft, they just hired everybody, anybody possible. And obviously, it's a bigger ship to drive, but I think Destiny in general, 1 or 2, was never designed to be this thing that was like constant balance changes, constant like, okay, we hear you, we want to do this thing. I think Bungie is so focused on giving that feedback because they did that during the Halo like 1 through 3 live days. I don't think they ever really thought it would get to that level. And then that could be a little naive, but I do think that there is a real, it's not something you can easily put on like a numbers report to say like, well, why aren't you guys wanting to do this? It's like, because we're tired of this. The money might be coming in, but the problem is the money is coming in at the same rate and we are being overworked trying to make all these people happy. And we don't really have a content slate for where this is going to go. We want to sunset this, but we know as soon as we do, and sure enough, people ask for Destiny 3. But if the people who are left at Bungie post the split, post leaving Microsoft, which that's another point I have, is Microsoft's resources and how they doled them out, I think is different from Sony. I do think the burnout was a big cause of that because Destiny was in a unique spot of being an MMO, but that had gun feel and had competitive elements that were way more utilized than like competitive
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, to me, the MMO stuff was always secondary. Like I just never gave. Frankly, the MMO stuff was the stuff that I complained the most about.
Right, exactly. I was the same way. Like I didn't care so much about like being like max level or whatever. I just cared about doing the content for the sake of
Yeah.
doing the content. I never
I wanted
cared
to
about
explore.
that.
I wanted to try the new the new guns
Right.
and play with my friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the expectation also is that people who played World of Warcraft, like the whole point when you play WoW is, oh, my friends are the max level. I want to level up really quickly and then I want to get there. And then there's end game content. And for a lot of people, that's what they want to do. They want to rush through whatever the actual like leveling or regular content is because they want to get to the end of the game where they do whatever is the most like
This is what
maximalist
a lot
thing.
of the Destiny community ended up being like.
Right, exactly. And a lot of that was very much focused on like, oh, what's the meta? Like, what is this thing? What are you supposed to do? Not, am I having fun doing the exploration? If you remember in Destiny 1, the Grimoire was supposed to be this awesome like side app. It was supposed to be way more involved. The early trailers of Destiny I still think about from time to time where they're like, yeah, there's live events that you can pop into, but it's optional, it's not a big deal. And then by the end, it was very much like, well, everyone wants to min-max so hard, they don't really care about the slower stuff. They only care about getting to the end and having raids to do and, you know, being world first and all that, which worked for some time. But I think the burnout is that the game Bungie wants to make is much more explorative than that. And I think even Marathon fails with this to some degree because there's lots of good story elements in Marathon, but you unlock it by playing the extraction shooter, which feels weird. But I think the problem is Bungie's been really good at making those single player experiences. Why Halo blew up, why Marathon has its fans.
Honestly, the best parts of Destiny were the ones that leaned heavily more into like single player type of experience.
Right. Some of the best writing in video games ever are literally like those little like vignettes that you would get. I don't even know what the loot was that you got it from. Some of the best writing I've ever read in my life came from stuff I read during that game, and I was like, holy shit, they are cooking. This could be its own thing, but it's
this is
not.
Like Dune level shit right here.
Right, exactly. Like there's like some great like heist level stuff that wipes Neuromancer off the map. That's that good, but the problem was that's not the stuff that's making money when the majority of the player base only cares about grinding and getting to the end game.
So the money thing, this is the thing I've been thinking about recently too. You guys can tell me whether you think this is off base or not. Obviously, the live service thing, that was like the big thing. It was Jim Ryan's whole mission. It like shook the industry when he came out and said we're basically, because it was Sony that came out after the PS4 era, basically during the PS4 era, towards the end. And they said this was remember the context. This was Sony having come off of Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 1, Last of Us 2, the 5 Uncharted games.
Right. And the remasters of some of those games already.
Yeah, and then the remasters of some of those games and fucking God of War 1, God of War 2, like some of the most successful, crazy, like most prestigious, award-winning single-player content ever made in the history of the medium. It made the PS4 like one of the biggest consoles ever. Sony dominated the industry for a fucking whole generation as a result of the PS4 and those types of single-player story narrative-based action games. And then they come out and they say, fuck all that. We had all the success. We've rubbed Microsoft's nose in it for the last 8 years. But no, psych, we're not going to do any of that anymore. We're going to do live service shit. And this was at a time when people were already kind of like suspicious of live service stuff. This was after microtransaction stuff and loot boxes and stuff. So with that as a predicate, what we're seeing now is basically almost every live service game, many of them from Sony, failing, and not just failing, but failing spectacularly and failing quickly. And so here's my question, or I guess here's my theory. I think the live service thing, that was a decision made by, frankly, the industry at large, but Sony specifically, by CEOs who didn't know much about A, their customer, but B, actual video game development. And basically what it felt like to me was that scene from The Breakfast Club, and you guys probably don't remember this, but there's this scene in The Breakfast Club when the vice principal, the douchebag vice principal, is talking to the janitor of the school, and he says, the kids have changed, And then the janitor,
he's like, no, they haven't. You have.
Yeah, he said, no, they haven't, Vern. You've changed. He says, like, what does he say? Oh, he says something
you
like...
got into this teaching gig because you thought it'd be fun, right? And then you found out it was going to be actual work.
Exactly. That's the line that I've always think about. It says, you tell me, like, you got into teaching because you thought it might be fun. You'd get summers off, you know, and then you found out, here's the kicker, and then he says, then you found out it was actually work, and that really bummed you out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the live service revelation has been. People realized, or CEOs at least are starting to realize, or maybe even devs, that yes, you can release a live service. Yes, it can be subscription. And yes, you can get people to give you more money every single month for the rest of time. But that doesn't mean that the development stops. Like it's still work. It's still the same amount of work, like dollar for dollar, hour for hour, as developing a single player action adventure RPG or anything else that you're making. A live service still means that you have, it's like, it doesn't, just because it's a live service doesn't mean you can stop providing a product. Like you have to continue to provide the product and develop the game. Otherwise,
Right.
people are not going to continue to buy it, and that's why they fail within like a year, because people buy it once, they don't continue to dev for it, they don't have a roadmap, they don't have content basically, and then they act all shocked and shaken when people don't want to play it anymore because there's nothing new to play. And like it
Yeah.
just seems to me that like they thought it would be fun that they would be a free lunch they could develop one time and have and just charge a service fee to continue accessing
Would
it.
never ever get bored of it ever.
And they never have to touch it again. And it's like clearly that's not what customers are okay with. Customers will do live services. This is what Destiny 2 proved. It's like people stopped. There was always this boom bust cycle with Destiny where people would play after an expansion for like a month and they would play nonstop and they would devote their whole lives to it. And then after a month, they would stop playing. They wouldn't log in anymore until the next expansion came out, and they would complain about there not being enough endgame content. Like forever, there was always that boom bust cycle with Destiny 2, and it's like that's the clearest marker to me that studios didn't realize that you couldn't just put something out there forever, let it lie fallow for months at a time, and expect customers to just continue to buy and
To stay interested.
give you
Yeah.
money, stay interested, and continue to play without new content. It's like this is what happens with single player games. Like you'll play the game and then never play it again once you're done, or not play it for a long time after you're done. But like that's normal. That's the cycle. And like then you move on to play it. Then the developers that they release a single player game, and then they maybe assign a quarter of the team to do like support for it later. But then they immediately move on to the next game. And that's still development. Like whether you're spending that development time on more
Maintaining
content,
what you have, or yeah.
like either they're spending that time developing more expansions for this, or they're developing that time developing a single player action adventure game. Like either way, you're spending 8 hours a day developing new content. That's what you're doing. And like it feels to me like they thought that the secret here to live services was that they could stop the dev cycle, that they could make money and not do any more development, or at least do a lot less. And it seems like that was not the case, and it never was.
No.
So,
I mean, number of good points there, obviously. I definitely think that Sony, I mean, if you look at Sony's history, like you were just saying, for a long time, especially in the 360 era, like Microsoft had the number of live service games. So people played Halo, they played, whatever, sports games, racing games, all that, right? Sony was really good at making those single like action adventure stuff, like Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, a lot of great, like awesome single player titles. When they wanted to switch to live service to try to cut into that cake, they didn't really have a way of doing that. So when, what was it? Not even like Concord, but like other live service games, they were like, well, we're going to launch it. And they were like, well, wait a minute, this isn't going to make this much in the first year. Well, then fuck no. Why would we do that? It's like, well, why are you telling us now after you've asked us to make one? Like, that's the reason why live service games like World of Warcraft being the number one that started, not just MMOs, but live service in general, the subscription model works because people want to play that game because it develops over time. It becomes fun. The problem is if you don't have the amount to invest now, then it's not going to work out in the long term. And this is during a time where obviously like from, the late 2000s to like the mid 2010s, late 2010s, people are growing up. People who played World of Warcraft don't have that kind of time anymore, nor do they have the capital to spend on that because they want to play shorter term stuff that still has long term effects that doesn't require playing like a whole shift. Yeah. And I feel like that part of the problem is a generational thing of like, right, but the people who are really interested in that were in high school and middle school when you started. They don't have time to play those games anymore. The other problem is also if you're going to invest in this, it's like, you know, starting a new business in general, right? You're supposed to take that loss up front for the first 2 years, but they don't want that because right now the market's so volatile, especially with all the acquisitions. They're like, no, we want to strike gold now. But the problem is they're trying to strike gold by like putting in a 15-year plan and being like, wait, but how come in the first year of our 15-year plan, it's not immediately the best thing ever? It's like, because that's how it works.
I think that's exactly right. Because here's what I think their mindset was. Their mindset was that they needed the same thing that every other private or frankly public company, probably even more often public companies, they had the same imperative that everyone else in the economy does, which is they have to grow their margins. They have to grow their margins because it's not enough to make a profit every month or quarter. They have to make a bigger profit this quarter than last time.
Yes, exactly.
So it's profit, but it's also more profit every quarter. And
which
so
I also,
it's relative profit.
That's also true outside of video games. But again, that, you know, pervades everything.
So here's my thinking here. They were up against that, as I say, the same problem that everyone else is facing. And they thought that a sort of shortcut to getting bigger margins is live service, because I think that's the biggest evidence that we have for them thinking that live service was actually less work.
Yes,
same amount
they thought
of
it would
money,
be that easy because they thought at this point there's been so many, the blueprints are plentiful, but they don't understand that those blueprints, right? It's the same problem in the live service game. WoW is still going on.
Yeah.
The ones that have ended typically don't end well, like Enter the Matrix, fucking Final Fantasy 11. When they end, you know, there's still a community that's very sad about it, but it's not like they end like, yes, we did it. There's no ribbon cutting at the end of a live service game. There's only the opposite.
Destiny is a good example. Like, they should have ended after Final Shape, but they didn't. And then they waited and waited months and months, and then they were
Which is also why I was so confused when they said that, oh, Final Shape. I was like, okay, Final's in the name. It's got to be the last one. Nope, there's more. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It's the same problem with movies. When like movies keep going, like horror obviously aside, because everyone loves to go to space, but it's like, do you like, unless you're like a Fast and Furious type thing where people get into the schlockier side of it, there's no reason to keep making more of it. So why would you do it? Which I also think is Bungie's motivation, because, you know, the whole 6 seasons in a movie idea, they're like, no, let's not do more of this because it's just going to make it worse. Yeah. If we can put a bow on it and have that legacy while having made the money, great. Let's end it now. If we keep going and we're all fresh out of ideas and we're all just burnt out, what are we making anymore? Are people going to enjoy it? Are we just going to have more players say, well, this is shit. Why do they keep making bad decisions? Like, because we don't even want to be making decisions in the first place. We want to be making something.
That's crazy for Bungie and Sony together at any point, whether independently or together, to have made the choice that we have built this, frankly, really kind of industry first kind of community of a looter shooter MMO that really didn't exist before Destiny came along, and that so many people outside of Bungie and Sony were trying to copy. We're trying to get, and that's why, I mean, ostensibly, again, that's why Sony bought Bungie, because Bungie was clearly like the industry expert at this thing. And so it's crazy to me that Bungie can clearly, in that sense, have been extremely successful in developing a community and, frankly, a customer base. I mean, they always had a lot of ups and downs when it came to like what their current player count was, like active player count was, but it was always usually pretty fucking high. It was hundreds of thousands of people playing at any given time, and like a lot of fans. And yes, there was a boom bust cycle where sometimes it was a ton of people and sometimes it was less.
But it never ruined the game entirely. People were still like, all right, well, I've already invested the time.
So my thinking is that, like, if you were, say, I don't know, a smaller, like, if you were Tango Gameworks, let's just say that.
Yeah.
And let's say you're a Tango Gameworks sized kind of indie company, right? And you told them that you were going to give them Destiny. You were going to give them Destiny. You were going to give them all the people that made it. You're going to give them the whole studio, and you're going to give them the IP. You're just going to give
everything to keep it alive. Yeah.
Yeah. And you get all the profits from it. You get the community with it. You get the IP with it. You get the expertise and the developers who built it. And you can just run it now for the rest of time. It's your problem now. most indie devs, at least indie devs, or indie devs basically,
Yeah.
who like the genre, because obviously a lot of indie devs are like going to choose what they want to do based on what they like. But let's assume that they're indie devs who love Destiny and like that kind of genre. Any indie dev you'd basically be they'd be winning the lottery if you gave them Destiny and that community and that customer base. They would immediately be instantly successful relative to what they've been before, the kind of profits that they're now turning, the kind of customer base, what they could do with a Destiny property like that. And the reason I think is because Destiny's probably turning 15, 25% profit margins. I'll bet you.
Oh yeah.
Something in that area.
Easily.
But at 25% profit margins, not enough for Sony, because Sony needs it to be 26 next month, and they need it to be 28 the following month, and they need 35 the following quarter.
Yeah.
And then that scales, and then eventually it needs to be 60%. And you start to run up against real like physical limits of what can actually be achieved in a free market economy.
Yeah,
of
100%.
Frankly, an industry that only has that, like every industry, has a limited total addressable market, TAM.
Yeah.
Every industry has a limited number of customers to whom they can sell. And so that's why infinite growth doesn't actually work ultimately, because eventually you'll run up against those limits of TAM. And like I feel like that's what's happening across the industry generally. I think normally it doesn't matter if all you're interested in is turning some kind of profit, which I think most indie devs, that's what they're trying to do, because they're typically not publicly traded either, right? So most indie devs are going to be privately owned. And so they're happy with 8% profit margins, 10, 15, 20, 25. They'd be over the moon about that. But because Bungie is owned by a big ass conglomerate,
right,
they got to turn giant ass margins. And even if they weren't publicly traded, they're going to be owned by a lot of VC and a lot of like private equity and like
a lot of stakeholders, a lot of
stakeholders who also don't care so much about the profit. They care about the value of that asset that they own. And so they eventually want, their small little indie dev company to go public, or they eventually want to sell their stake in this company for more than they bought it for. That's what they're in it for. They're not in it for profits every month. They're in it for quarterly turnover.
Right. They're in for quarterly growth, not quarterly consistent profits. Right. Which I think is the problem with every company. I do think, especially like, again, we mentioned this before, like Bungie, the reason why, and this is true of not just video games, but like movies, other things, when there is this sort of like golden goose small developer, this small studio, they have that sauce because they make stuff they like. And it's not just, this whole like, I'm not even putting it in like the art, flowery terms of like, oh, they're really passionate and they really like that. Like, obviously, yes, but that does come through in numbers, in the sense that that's why when they were under Microsoft and they were making Halo blew the fuck up, because it was, one, like Quake and like Doom, it had this big multiplayer, presence, and people really liked the main story. They liked both the single player and multiplayer, so they got really into it. I don't know how they operated under Microsoft, but it sounded like Microsoft was like, hey, you guys know how to cook. You tell us, we'll work with you to help give you those resources. Whereas Sony was like, no, we want this like now because, the growth profits. And I think the other problem is also, when Sony acquires a studio like Bungie, they don't know how to let them do their own thing in order to make that. And yes, it's kind of a risk, but that's the whole point of like a business, right? Is, again, it's the whole taking a loss potentially to make something better. Bungie's only used to making these kinds of games because it's, one, it's stuff they want to like, but two, it's stuff they know that their audience cares about. It's not just like, oh, well, let's just make a live service game for the sake of making one. It's like, no, if we make a random, like if they did Anthem, for instance, that would still fail, right? In the sense that if they made, an Anthem-like game, but it's not fun to play and it's not the same thing, it doesn't matter whose name is attached to it. If anything, it's actually a negative, because now it's like, why did Bungie make this? Why did they choose to try to go in this direction? It's not really what they do. And I definitely do think that Sony has a bigger hand in that creative aspect, and they don't really know how to do it. But I mean, and like you were saying, Ian, I do think that there are still higher ups at Bungie who still made the decision to go with whatever Sony was asking them to do. And that's part of the problem, is because there's this, like, I don't know if it's infighting or a schism, but people who worked at Bungie were like, okay, but they're asking us to make live service, but we've actively had meetings about not doing Destiny anymore. So if we're doing a live service, like, what's the next thing that we're doing? Because that has to come from a place where it actually is a real thing. If it's, you know, I mean, EA, all of the places have this, like, we're going to make our own, like, Outriders, whatever the fuck that was. Shit like that comes up and then it dies instantly. And it's like, well, when that's the industry trend and Bungie can see it because they're not stupid, it's like, we're not going to do that. It's going to fail immediately. So
Such a
what's
crazy
the
way to
alternative?
put it. It's so weird. It's crazy that you say that because I'm thinking now, Sony basically went to Bungie and said, all we want to do is make live service games. And they
Right.
then they went to Bungie and they were like, oh, so what are you going to do with your really, like, relatively amazingly successful live service game? Oh, we're wrapping it up. Like,
Right. And I don't know, again, like, the timeline of
live
who
service
did it.
games, letting them wrap this thing up. I don't
Right.
understand.
I mean, I think, like, I don't know how much Sony really had the effect. I mean, those articles, I will say, that was the moment where I literally thought Destiny 2 was going to end before Final Shape, because before Final Shape came out was when all those articles were like, yeah, people who are working at Bungie are talking to us anonymously, and they fucking hate it there right now. And they used to love it. Like, it's the same thing with, like, people that go to Blizzard and they're like, oh, actually, Blizzard is basically Fang, you know,
Yeah.
Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, whatever, for games. And right, that works. But I think what the difference with Blizzard is, one, I mean, obviously investors and money, but two, the acquisition they have, who they were bought out by, them and Activision together. Activision's a publisher. It's basically EA light. I think the difference there is Bungie's founding principles were strong enough that they were like, the stuff we make has to be stuff that we think is actually going to be successful and also stuff that's actually fun. It's again why I go back to those vidocs of Halo 2, is because they enjoyed playing the game while making it. And again, not to be flowery, but it's like, that is the reason why those games work. The problem is when you try to rush that, when you say, you guys have the juice, how do we squeeze more out? All you're asking them to do is say, well, we didn't really imagine it at that scale. We can make something similar to the last thing, but it's not an IP, A, that anyone is going to know, and B, if it's a new IP, it's always going to be a risk. There's no way we can guarantee you that money.
Anyone who's taken Econ 101 or Business 101, anything in that space, one of the first things you learn is that it's always easier to keep a customer than win a new one. Keep an existing one than win a new one. Don't you think that, and I think it's obviously it's easy to say in retrospect and hindsight, but I think this, and the reason why I say it's like the first thing you learn, because I also think it should have been plainly obvious to start with. So people like even Jim Ryan should have known better. And that is that, like, wouldn't it have always made more business sense to your point, Tom, to, instead of throwing out D2 and trying to figure something else out, or frankly, in their case, maybe not even trying to figure something else out, but just not wanting D2 anymore, wouldn't it have made more sense just to make D2 good, like really good again, and like to stop, like to respond to the community and make it something that people, and frankly, release more content more often to avoid those boom bust cycles? And like, but again, it gets back to that idea, like, I think ultimately what they wanted was to do nothing and make money by doing nothing.
I will say, I do think that it's a failing on Bungie to recognize that. I think it's kind of one of those harder decisions of, like you were saying before, in the hypothetical where, okay, they just sell, or, you know, they give Destiny 2 to Sony, saying like, hey, we'll stay in partnership, you know, there's no acquisition, whatever, we'll give you Destiny 2. I think the first problem, which is kind of a small thing, but is kind of important, is how do you maintain Destiny 2? Like, if you're not acquiring the studio that's actively maintaining it, that has the knowledge of the game, how do you keep that going? I don't think Sony could do that. I mean, Sony had Santa Monica and a bunch of other studios. Obviously, they can't do it without them. So they know, like, well, it has to be you, because who the fuck else is going to take up that mantle?
That's why I say, like, that's why the real scenario, I imagine, is like, if you gave Bungie, and along with Destiny, to a really tiny indie dev, obviously, to your point, you need to also give them the devs. You got to give them Bungie. You got to give them.
It's a whole package. I mean, it has to be at least, if not a transitional period, where it's like, okay, for the first, like first 2 or 3 years, and then we try to knowledge share that to other developers. Sure, but again, yeah, it's a transitional period that takes time.
I think you have an answer to the question: how much would that be worth to an indie company? How much would Destiny and Bungie and all of their assets, all of their people, all of their infrastructure, knowledge, experience, everything, their profit, their pipeline, like everything that they got.
Right.
How much is that actually worth to a indie dev? And I think we have an answer to that. In fact, we've got an actual number for it.
Yeah,
it's $3 billion is what.
Yeah, it's essentially priceless based on anyone who's trying to survive in the industry.
Right, and so it's worth. You're telling me, effectively, what's happened here is that Destiny 2, a $3 billion franchise, because that's all Bungie had at the time, really, plus a few ancillary things here and there, projects in the pipeline, but obviously not proven yet. So the only thing that Bungie was actually worth is Destiny 2 and the people who made it. That's it. And then your answer, that's a $3 billion property.
Right, for just those two things together. Yeah.
Just those two things. And what you do with it is shut it down?
Yeah.
Why?
That, I think, and I will say, you know, I do think that is really the crux of why Bungie, not Sony specifically, but Bungie did fuck up, because, I mean, from a business sense, it makes sense. Like, obviously, you have this golden goose. Why, if it's creative differences or whatever, and shut it down, you can still give it. You could try to give it away. You can try to negotiate. Well, if we want to keep the goose alive, even if we don't want to maintain the goose anymore, there are ways to do that. I think where they messed up was
make a D3.
Well, maybe not even messed up. I think it's more of a. It's kind of a hard decision, right? Because, like I was saying before, Bungie, Seventh Column, they've cared so much about their communities, and I don't think this is the actual answer. I think what they were worried about is knowing that Sony has tried the live service shit before. They tried like launch exclusive titles in PS3, like Layer, that just never went anywhere. Yeah. I think what they, and this is a total speculation. I think what they were worried about was, if we hand this over to Sony, it transitions, whether it's immediate, whether it's over time, whether we work on it for a little bit and we gradually get moved off of it. If we leave the fans behind and Sony, you know, just ruins it or they cancel it, now we've got a bunch of people who are pissed at us because we gave it to Sony knowing that they were likely not going to be able to make it work because they have a track record of already not making live service stuff works. Yeah. And again, that might be a far fetch. Obviously, it's not talking about dollars; it's talking about, you know, personal pride and legacy. But I do think there are some higher ups at Bungie who probably did say, no, if it's gonna tank, we're gonna be the ones to do it, because if we hand it off to Sony and they can't make it work, then we fucked up, and now all that fan base is, they don't trust us ever again. Because the one thing that we were working on, Destiny, is now gone. We have no other baskets to put eggs in.
If you're Sony and you value this company at $3 billion and you pony up the cash for it, how do you have a conversation with Bungie that ends in, okay, we'll stop development on D2? Like, what? How is that the answer for a company that just paid $3 billion for a company whose only asset is this live service MMO that they have built? And so the answer, it's baffling to me that Sony has, I get maybe Bungie doesn't want to make it anymore. In what universe does Sony give a fuck about what Bungie wants to do? They own Bungie now. They presumably bought Bungie for Destiny. And they, like, if I were Sony, here's two things. One, if I were Sony, I'd be saying, you're making more Destiny, or you're making you're making more Destiny one way or another, either more D2 or you're moving on to a D3. But then Sony, the sort of weird, bizarre twist here is that that's the right answer for Sony. It was always the right answer for Sony to do that. But for some reason, they they decided that we don't want you to make, we basically want Destiny, but we don't want to pay to make it. Like, so they, like, again, it goes back to that idea that they want more margin. They wanted to buy Destiny, and they thought somehow they were gonna buy Destiny and Bungie, and they're gonna put that on autopilot. And now it's just a thing that's a free cash machine. They don't have to develop for it anymore. They're just gonna have people play Destiny 2 forever and ever and ever, and play fucking the Shattered Glass whatever the fuck it,
Right. Yeah.
like infinitely forever, and then not develop for it. And so like those were their two. That's basically like that was Sony's intention. What they really wanted was Bungie to come in and just give them Destiny and have that play in the background, make them a shit ton of money, and then have Bungie, I don't know, sit around and because to me, I think they bought Bungie for Destiny.
They did.
I don't think they wanted it. I don't think they even wanted Bungie.
No, they wanted Destiny because that was the property that made that was then that kept Bungie afloat.
The $3 billion that they paid wasn't for the workers at Bungie. It wasn't for the devs. It wasn't for the experience. It wasn't for how good they were at live service games. Because again, you can pay for consultancies there. You don't need
They can transfer that out. They can take what they've learned and take it.
Because of they wanted Destiny. Because that's the only thing you could. That's the only thing that Bungie had to offer was Destiny, and so that's why I don't understand. Because either when they bought Bungie, they either had to know what Bungie's intentions with Destiny were, and even if they didn't know, and somehow they were blindsided by the time they bought Bungie about what Bungie's plans for Destiny were, at that point you own them, and you can say you're doing Destiny. Tough shit.
It's force smart that they could
get out, and they didn't do either. Like either they didn't prep properly, or they did and then didn't, and then allowed the thing that they bought the company for to just be canceled.
Yeah,
and to me that's only because they thought that live services were cheap to run and easy to own, and as it turns out, it was actually work. And it was actually cost and investment that have to continue to, like for every month that you get that subscription from whoever it is that you're selling it to, or every time they buy a battle pass, that every dollar you get still requires like 50 cents of development. And they didn't want to pay that 50 cents. They thought that we could just buy D2 and Bungie, and then no one's going to have to work on it. We just own the property now.
Yeah.
And then they found out that D2 actually takes work to maintain. And that's when they made the call, oh, well, we don't actually want this thing then. Because even at 25% profit margins, that's not good enough. Because that's actually going to lose us value. Because that's quarterly earnings that aren't going up from quarter to quarter. Therefore, it basically might as well be valueless to us.
Right. And they've got to impress those stakeholders in order to say, hey, we're better than Microsoft in this way.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Wikipedia article again. Some interesting points here also about their history. So in 2025, what is it, August 21st, what was it, Parsons? I forget his first name. The CEO of Bungie leaves.
Pete Parsons.
Right, yeah, Pete Parsons. He leaves, and then Justin Truman, the general manager for Destiny 2, takes his place. In November of 2025, Sony releases a financial report that says that their level of sales and user engagement of D2 hasn't reached the expectation it had at the time of acquisition of Bungie.
Yeah,
and
this was after they already paid off a bunch of people, right? Like over the course of time, they've laid people off.
Right. So they claim they're taking an impairment loss of about $204 million due to that.
Right.
So what also that tells me is that I think when Bungie was balancing not Bungie, but Sony, and again, obviously the blame is on both sides here. I completely agree with that. When Sony bought them, what they were buying, they weren't looking at just that number total of what they already brought in. They were adding on to that saying, here's what Destiny could make. Right. And the problem with that, I think, is, like you said, when they looked at their books, they realized, oh no, Bungie's actually making a flat, like that number hasn't changed much.
Correct.
Well, shit, we thought they were going to make us more money, but they've been consistently independently making that much money because that's what independents do, is they keep that flat amount of money.
Exactly. That's exactly the point I'm making. Yes, it's that they were deeply naive about how an independent company actually works and what the value of an independent company is versus what the value of a public company is. And also, beyond that, it's like they look at Destiny and they think that it will make a certain amount. So it's like to your point, either they thought it was going to make more money than it already was, right? So it could go, like to your point, that maybe they looked at it and thought it could get bigger, right?
Right. Or it should get bigger.
There's two problems with this way of thinking. One, it's Destiny 2, which came out in fucking 2017. It's a mature game with a mature community. They're not about to discover a whole bunch of new players that they never discovered before.
Right. There's no one left to pull, and even if there is, it's not going to be like a life-changing thing.
No new TAM, as it were, for Destiny. They have what they're making now is at best what they're going to make 10 years from now. If they're alive for 10 more years, that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to get bigger. It could continue to be profitable, but it's not going to become Fortnite. Like, it's not going to pop off.
No,
right?
And Fortnite is mostly like propped up by IP acquisition deals.
Correct. Yeah. So that was their first error in thinking that it could get bigger, which clearly it wasn't going to get bigger.
No.
And so I feel like the progress of their thinking, the progression was, oh, it's not going to get bigger, but maybe we can make the margins better by basically reducing costs, by basically firing a bunch of people.
Right, which is required to make that money in the first place.
Right. Exactly, and that's their second error, was not understanding. It gets to my original point. Their second error was, well, then if we're not going to get bigger because there's no more TAM for this product, then we have to make it more profitable somehow, and so we reduce the cost, which means reducing labor.
Right.
And then they found out, to your point, that reducing labor is also going to reduce sales because it's going to make the product shittier, and that's actually going to any dollar we gain by reducing costs by firing people, we are losing on the back end by fewer sales, fewer re-ups, fewer battle passes, fewer expansions and shit. Because again, it gets back to my original idea then. They thought they could do it without any work. They thought that live services were a fucking gold mine because that meant that they didn't have to work on anything. They didn't have to hire people, no more cost. It was all profit. It was pure margin. And they found out real goddamn fast that doesn't work, and that you cannot turn it into a money machine. It's not a ATM.
No. And I think the thing that's more inexcusable on Sony's part also is it's not the first time Sony is in this particular scenario. Yes, Bungie is a very specific acquisition. It would be like acquiring Kojima again and still fumbling that bag. The other problem is that Sony has given that kind of priority to other people to make live service games, and then they just shuttered. I don't know if Concord was theirs or not, but I think of other games like that, where Sony was like, actually, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And the problem is, once you've done that a number of times, it's like, okay, if it's kind of like striking out in high school baseball and just never making the team dozens of times, and then you're like, all right, this time we're going to go straight to the MLB. And it's like, why do you think you would be able to do that if you couldn't make it at the high school level? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Which is like, that's kind of the core of it, right? It's the idea that like their reality distortion field was so exceptional that, and I think ultimately it was kind of like psychosis caused by Fortnite.
So yeah, it's financial, it's economical psychosis in an industry that has only ever seen booms, right? Like movies, music, TV shows have had their own histories. I think video games, and this is a general point, but a lot of video games, especially the AAA people, even EA to some degree, suffer from this idea of, oh my God, look how fast we've grown. Clearly that's a scale we can keep going. And the answer is no, it can't, because there's only so much money in the world. It's not possible.
Correct. Yes, again, that's the infinite growth problem. And again, there's only so many customers and there's only so much money and time that they can invest in any single thing. Even if you get 100% of it, there are limits to it. So, and it to me just feels like every possible opportunity that they had to do analysis, to make decisions, to project the future, to evaluate their own properties, to evaluate other people's properties.
Yeah. On both sides, too. Both Sony and Bungie, to be clear. But exactly. I think more Sony, but Bungie is still responsible.
They at every single turn drew the wrong conclusions and made the wrong choices. And I do feel like Bungie and Sony is so representative. It's such a microcosm of everything else that's going wrong in not just video games, but like business and economy in general, but especially video games, because it encapsulates all of the errors that every other major company and even mid-major company seems to be making in terms of, and not just the errors, but also the imperatives that they seem to be working under, which is obviously growth, 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 growth is the imperative. And it seems like they don't know how to work in that environment. In fact, I think this is the problem that's happening with NVIDIA too. I think the reason why NVIDIA is pushing so hard into AI, apart from just because there's a shitload of money there right now, it's also because they're incentivized because they had hit a wall with growth in the video game industry and personal PC industry.
Exactly.
They were not making big advancements in tech like they're hitting a wall technologically. They're also hitting a wall as a result, they're hitting a wall with their total addressable market. They remain dominant in the market. The problem is they've exhausted their TAM, so they can't grow anymore. They still make a shitload of profit, but there's no more growth possible anymore. And so they needed desperately to expand into new markets, because without that, their company value is not going to go up anymore. And
right, because the company value is the growth, not the flat profit. Even if they are the highest earning, but if in the past 5 years they can't report any growth, then people are like, well, then why do you want them? It's like, because they make a shitload of money. Why would you not want that?
Understanding that a lot of industry people, especially industry media, and frankly, like gamers as well, I think we fail to realize that profit and company value are not the same thing, and that it's not 1974 anymore, where profit is why. Because here's the thing, this is another thing people need to understand. Companies used to pay out dividends.
They did.
Right? The point of owning stock in 1957 was not. I mean, it's nice if your value of your stock goes up. That's great.
Right.
But the point of owning stock was not primarily to sell it later. It wasn't primarily to just raise the value of the stock and therefore sell it later and turn a profit that way. It was to be entitled to the dividends from the profits of the company.
Right. It was to own that share for the sake of whatever those flat profits were at the time. Which were
the more profit they made, the bigger your dividend was. And so profits are the reason why you owned that company. You wanted really profitable companies. And the good thing about that system is that even though let's say you make 25% profit margins in quarter one, but then you only make 20% profit margins in quarter two, your profits went down. You're still getting paid on money in dividends. You still have an income. You're still making money off of that. What the difference though, and now that you don't rely on dividends, you're relying on asset value, then all you really care about is whether the price share goes up, the price of your shares go up. And that has nothing really to do with profits. It can sometimes have something to do with profits, but that's incidental, and that's also not controlled by, that's not guaranteed. Lots of things can cause the prices of your stock to go up and down.
Oh, yeah.
And so people are like, especially in the video game industry, are like, well, these games, there's so much money, they're making so much money, they raise prices on games. They're like, how can they possibly be going under? How are all these video game companies constantly in dire straits?
Right.
And it's like, it's because they can't square the two. They don't understand how they can fundamentally sell a ton of games and have super successful games critically and sell a shit ton of games, and at the same time feel like they're being squeezed all the time and that companies are just struggling to survive. I think that's why. I think it's because it doesn't matter how much profit they actually make. They have to make more and more profit, and they are running up against the limits of their total addressable markets in that regard. And so they can at the same time look extremely successful by turning big old profit margins, and that is still not good enough.
Exactly. And that's, like we said before, it's true of just corporations in general, but especially in the video game market where, what it takes to make a video game is not just the programming. It's also art, it's music, it's licensing, it's marketing, it's all this stuff. It's so many more. And that's not to say that TV and music and movies have their own struggles. They do. I think the big difference in making video games is the effort and the amount of people required is such a big team, even at a small scale compared to like some movies like Uncut Gems probably didn't cost it cost some, but not like a ton, right? And I think the problem is that so many companies just assume like, okay, but there's so much money to be made. It's like, right, but do you understand the initial investment cost to make that stuff in the first place?
This is a
Small
really
or
good,
not?
this is a great point because Jason Schreier actually did a video on this a while. He actually did a series of videos on this.
Yeah, Jason Schreier is great.
Yeah, and they're obviously because Jason Schreier knows all. It was on point with with all of it. I mean, he knows that what he knows from once he speaks. Like he knows his shit.
Yes,
But I
yeah.
think the thing that's important to like take out of that, because he made one video. I think it was maybe his second or third video he ever made on YouTube because he just recently moved to YouTube.
Yeah,
He pointed out that like he did like a series on why games are so expensive to make. And like they're fabulously expensive to make, and it's pretty clear in the way he laid it out as to why. And it's pretty obvious. I mean, they're extremely complex products that demand a shit ton of labor and effort and design and frankly time, and that's also money investment,
right,
to develop. So to your point, they're vastly more complex than even complex things like movies and TV shows and music and things like that. A single product for a video game takes much more time, investment, expertise than just a single music album or a single movie, which a movie might take 9 months to produce, actually, once it gets a green light, whereas a video game will take upwards of 8, 9, 10 years even to make a video game. Here's the thing, though, that's important to note, that a game can cost $400 million to make, right? So a big blockbuster movie can cost $350, $400 million to make. A video game can cost something similar, but how much money do they make on the back end of that? Look at GTA.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
The margins on GTA, the margins on Witcher 3, the margins even on fucking Silksong, the margins on actually successful games that do sell. Yes, it's true to say that they cost a shit ton of money to make, but they also make a shit ton of money, a lot of money. The only difference is, like, is it enough of a margin for the company making it to not get flamed by their owners, by their shareholders, right?
Right.
So, to me, it's important to understand that when you hear all the time, like, dude, games industry, like games are too expensive to make. I don't actually buy that argument. I know you're not making that argument, but I think people in the industry see those videos from Jason Schreier and they're like, oh my God, no wonder the industry is failing. It's like, well, yeah, it's extremely expensive and it's more expensive than it's ever been, no doubt. But I also think that like saying that is also doing two things. One, it's undermining the value of the labor involved, because what you're basically saying with that argument, without giving it more context, is you're saying, well, you just need to make it with fewer people, right? So you're basically saying fire people. You're kind of justifying that argument,
right?
But you're also again ignoring the flip side that yes, they're extremely expensive, but they make a shit ton of fucking money,
right? That initial cost, whatever that maintenance cost, is the same problem with like the whole like live service push. It's like, right, but if that's what you want, you're going to be making a similar amount of money. It's just your initial cost is going to be more, but the amount of money you're going to make is more. So it's going to equal out to that scale. But the problem is when you want growth from a live service game, it's like Amazon had that New World game, and it's like, great, and that's I think dead or about to die or something like that. It's not like you can just invest in that, and it's like, well, how come we can't do WoW but make this exponential growth? It's because WoW never made exponential growth. The reason why WoW got popular is because Blizzard had connections and they had people who worked in the industries, and their hiring practices made them more, appealing to other developers. Like that, the problem is like what they're investing in long term is not this thing. Like again, like you said with movies, right? There's some movies like I saw The Backrooms recently. I like The Backrooms. Is it a great movie? Not really. Do I love it? Yeah, because it's original, but it's also made on a budget of mostly CGI, mostly other stuff, but it works because that's what people want, because it is different. And the same thing with like roguelikes, right? Obviously, Balatro is not a game for everybody. Balatro's developer is one guy with some help from other people, because the solo dev thing is stupid. But that makes that money because it's original. Is it going to make like Destiny 2 money? Fuck no. But that's not the point. But when people try to scale that up and say, well, there's so many games doing so well, it's like, right, but you're not really looking at the industry for what it is. How many live service games are reporting these crazy high increases of numbers? The few that are mostly friend slot games, and that is a burst at once that does not last that long. Even Among Us, like Inner Swamp is not making that money anymore. Like it's not possible.
Yeah, the money has been made, right? The
Right.
market has been saturated. The people who are going to buy it have bought it by and large.
Right. It's already there. It's already done.
Yeah, and like to our point, I guess collectively here is that with live services, it's like it's a live service until it's not, right? So they sell it once, and that's great. They're not going to get people to continue to buy it unless they keep offering them new things. And that's where they start to lose the plot, which is like what you don't get to do is magically reinvent capitalism at that point and be like, I'm going to sell you a thing forever. I'm going to keep reselling it to you forever.
Exactly.
With no new product. Like no product in the history of mankind has ever worked that way.
No,
like,
it never has. Yeah,
like,
that was incredible.
Except for food and water.
Right. Shit that is essentials where you literally cannot get rid of it.
Yeah. Like we have to buy eggs every month, right? Okay.
Right.
Sure. But like I don't need to pay every month to replay Vault of Glass. I don't need to do.
I think that's the other problem about creative industries. And that's why I always mention like TV and movies and music is because creative industries require, I mean, at the very core, it's like if you want to make money off a good idea, you can't just bullshit it into existence. It has to come off something real, which is why you have stuff like Sony buying Bungie, because they're like, hey, you guys have the sauce. How do we make more of that sauce? And also it has to make a 75% increased profit. It's like,
how can we make more of that sauce and do it with no human beings and not any investment?
Right. It's kind of why I know, I'm sure Devolver Digital has their problems. What I like about the publishers who publish a lot of these like roguelikes and stuff is because they recognize like stuff like Balatro and like Bollock's Pit, all that is like the reason why they're so good is because they're really good original concepts that they're not going to make millions of dollars in 3 years time, but the amount of money they make up front as principal is fucking crazy. And they're like, cool,
their expectations properly.
Right. And that's kind of where the industry is right now. I mean, at least for people who like those kinds of games like I do, I like that. Like Clover Pit, like a lot of other like Blueprints, stuff like that is great because yeah, it's not stuff you're going to play as a forever game, but the initial like wonder and the splendor you get from those games is worth the money. And it's not like, you know, $15, $20 here and there is a big deal. The problem with like, I was playing Final Fantasy 14 for about a year-ish. And while it's great fun, I've had my experiences. Wow, I've played MMOs. I was like, I don't really feel it's justified to keep doing this because it's just content for content's sake. The stuff that keeps people interested is changing. And the problem with trying to keep up with that is even when they're like, oh, it's an extraction shooter. Oh, we got to do this. It's like, well, it works for a little bit of time, but it's not going to ultimately save you long term. If it was, you would have companies who have been doing that since the mid 2000s, and that's not happening besides Blizzard. But again, very specific origin of a lot of genres inspiration that if you weren't there at the time, it's not going to happen again.
Well, a really great example of this, in my opinion, is Warframe. Digital Extremes and Warframe.
Yes, Warframe is a great example. Yeah.
So they're the one, to me, these days, now that all the dust has settled after like D2's basically gone under, in my opinion, the only truly successful live service looter shooter ever made is Warframe.
And I believe Warframe is free to play, right? Like that is the other part. It's crazy
so
about
Warframe has been successful. What do we mean when we say Warframe's been successful? Well, Warframe has existed, I think, since 2014. It was a launch title on PS4. I think it was one of the first games available on PS4. And it was free. It's always been free. You can always play it for free. And here's the other thing. You can play, it's ever since the beginning, you've basically been able to play the whole fucking game forever, beginning to end, every piece of content, forever, for free. If you never want to pay anything for it, you never have to pay anything for it. You can, You can buy a lot of shit in that game. You can spend a lot of money in that game, but you don't have to. It's a full game on its own. You don't have to pay anything extra to play it. And here's the other thing that they've always done. They have always delivered new content. Always. They deliver new content every single year consistently, and it's really good. The community has always liked it. Obviously, the quality's gone up and down here and there. There's people's favorite things and people's least favorite things, but the balance of it has been very good quality. In fact, it's actually been improving in quality over time. All that being said, clearly they've made investment, right? So they never stop developing for it. They develop on a regular cadence. They listen to their community. They continue to make it better. They continue to do work, right? They never got to the point where they're like, oh, I'm going to put it on autopilot.
Right. There was never a backward.
This isn't any work. We understand that the work has to continue to be made so that we can continue to make the game a live service. That's the service part of it, right? And then secondarily, they never, by all accounts, ever expected it to become Fortnite, right? They were never on infinite growth paradigm. As far as I can tell, I believe Digital Extremes is still independently and privately owned. I believe they basically, their model has been, we've got a good game here that delivers consistent profits month after month after month. None of those profits are ever making everybody in the whole company a billionaire, but they are giving everybody a really good living.
Right. And it's sustainable.
For a long
it's
time.
Cost
It's
of living. It's
exactly.
Yeah. And the nice part about Digital Extremes with that game specifically is what Warframe was on PC, PlayStation, and I think it's on Xbox. At least I assume it is anyway.
It's on everything.
But it's one of those where it's like they're not directly owned by Sony. I'm sure they've had talks, they've had meetings, but it's one of those where because they let it do what it's doing, sure, it might not be the biggest contender, but I remember my last roommate had a PS4 or PS5. I would see Warframe advertised pretty regularly. It wasn't like everywhere, but it was like, hey, Warframe is always an option. And I was like, that's really cool. I'm glad that it's there because it's an easily accessible game. It's fun. It's a game that's, it has microtransactions that are optional. It's never required to. And I've always liked that because I was like, Warframe is one of those games where I'm always like, even if I have nothing else to play, could download Warframe. And I like Warframe. I enjoy the gameplay of it. And I think it's a smart way of doing it because Warframe is also, it's very funny that we're talking about MMOs because World of Warcraft, like Blizzard has its own convention. I'm sure, Warhammer has its own. They have TennoCon. They have a convention for Warframe, and Warframe is a free-to-play game. It's got its own fucking convention. That's how big it is. And even if it's not making huge growth percentages per year, it's making money enough that it can sustain itself and then some in order to pay like income for their employees. And I'm like, that's the ideal goal, I think, with whether you own them or not, or whether they're independent. If you can do that with an online live service game, that's how live service exists. And we have evidence of it, but people don't look at that. They look at, wow.
This is interesting information, though. I don't actually think it changes the narrative. So I just looked it up. Warframe was, Digital Extremes was independent for most of its existence. It actually was, and I do remember this now, it actually was a co-developer of Unreal. That's
right. Yeah, no, they were. They worked with them for a while because
they obviously were big. They were big players already at that point, but they'd obviously made Warframe. They were very successful. They ended up getting bought by a Chinese company, Liu or something like that, apparently. For $73 million.
Oof.
73 million. Bungie, 3 billion. Okay, well, let's just keep that in mind.
Yeah, numbers.
They got bought in 2014 for 73 million. Then the company that bought them was bought by Tencent. Fucking
Tencent.
But here's the number. They got bought by Tencent in 2020 for 138 million. Here's why I think this matters. 138 million is absolute fucking peanuts compared to its main competitor.
Compared to just fucking Bungie alone, my God,
basically nothing.
That's like not even 10%.
Here's the thing about that. I think the fact that it only cost Tencent $138 million for Digital Extremes, that is why Digital Extremes has been able to basically operate with impunity for the last decade, because no one is expecting them to be Epic Games and developing Fortnite. Basically, Tencent knew what they were getting with Warframe, let Digital Extremes do Warframe, and Digital Extremes has done nothing but do Warframe for 10 years and has basically turned out the same profit quarter after quarter after quarter. And the amazing thing is that Tencent allows them to just be what every company always says that they want from a live service game, is just consistent revenue. That's all they say. They always want their live service games to be consistent revenue. And I think the only reason why that actually applies in reality for Digital Extremes is because they were so cheap to buy in the first place. Conversely, you hear Sony and Bungie saying, well, we just want a live service because it's consistent, reliable revenue. And yet they behave as though it's not consistent, reliable revenue what they want. What they want is consistent and reliable growth. And that is not...
They wanted to get bigger, even though there's nothing in the game plan that would ever indicate that.
Exactly. It was exactly the point I was just going to make, but you put it better than me, which is ultimately that a live service, the idea that a live service is going to also be infinite growth is so contradictory. Of all the types of games that you could ever make, a live service is the least likely to continue to grow over time.
Right.
Because it's the same game over time. Yes, you can add new content, but it's always, D2 is always going to be D2. Like Warframe's always going to be Warframe. There will be more expansions, but the biggest chunk of your player base is going to be people who were there to begin with. It's your first customers, and then you add more customers incrementally. So
and that balances out any negatives from people leaving. It's
like, so this is what I'm saying. This is why Warframe, I think, has been exceptional in this. It's because they never treated Warframe as a growth driver. They always treated Warframe as what live services are good at, which is delivering consistent, reliable revenue, predictable revenue.
Right. They never push it to be, Warframe has to be like, household name like Fortnite.
Exactly.
No, let it go. And it's funny that you mentioned that.
Warframe was turning 20% margins every quarter, and they're like, great, keep doing that. That's what we want.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because in the late 2000s is where we saw the boom of MMOs, like The Matrix Online, City of Heroes, stuff like that, and they all shuttered very quickly because people were like, oh, look at what World of Warcraft has done. That must mean that MMOs are the growth market. And the answer is no, they're not. You're looking at the exception. You're looking at the progenitor saying, well, so like Rift, Aeon, all the other MMOs, even the Korean ones, get shut down because they realized, well, they're making consistent money, but not a lot. And not what we expected.
That's the same phenomenon of Fortnite psychosis, right? It's the idea that like that's the new standard, when that's not. That's the exception, not the rule.
Right. And I feel that happens in a lot of genres too, because like FriendSwap games have their own thing, and so do roguelikes. But I think the problem is that these exception, the one or two cases that get in the news makes such a big deal that people are like, oh, that's the new growth vector. And the answer is no, it isn't. It's a growth vector because it's the first one or two that get popular. Correct. Same thing with Among Us. In fact, I think Among Us is the reason why we have stuff like Peak and Repo and all that, is because they see that and they go, oh my God, we have to do that now.
You've gone first to market. You've exploited a part of the industry that's never been exploited before. Now that it's not first to market anymore, you're generally not going to create value where there wasn't any before.
Right. Like they chase the trends, but it's like they even know that like Business 101 would be like, well, right, it's a market trend, but how many times can someone iterate on that trend and have not just the profit, but the growth? If you want to go for the profit, you could have a FriendSwap game come out and it makes plenty of money. Aggro Crab has done that with Peak and their own games enough. But it's like, if you want growth, no, you have to hit something totally original. And the problem is following someone else's the fucking tailcoats is not going to happen. Yeah. All
right. Well, I think we sold Bungie, and I think we'll
learn. Sorry to capitalize the chat Bungie here, Nate. I know you were. You did some fucking work on those shadows, by the way. I saw that boss kill. That was fucking crazy. I thought you were gonna die. That was insane.
All I have to say is that I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Nate, my favorite part of the stream has actually just happened, and it was you walking up to that end, that bridge, that bridge
Yeah.
nowhere, looking at the
Yeah.
moon and thinking, "What do I do?"
I was like,
honestly,
do I jump into the water because it's all like glowy down there? And I'm like,
that was
I'll
me
do
in
that
both
after.
Dark Souls 1 and 3, where I would like beat a boss and I'd be like, oh, finally, breath of fresh air. And then I'd come to some weird site and I'd be like, I'll deal with that later. I'm good, actually.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
doing that shit right now.
Nate, you looked like, I saw you looking around too with your character. You were like the Bloodborne version of John Travolta in the middle of the street in Pulp Fiction. Like,
Right? Yeah,
Yeah,
doing
just sort
what's
of.
going on.
what? Yeah, that was you. That was your John Travolta Pulp Fiction moment.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was
Anyway.
like, I'm gonna deal with this later. It is past time.
To cap off the whole Bungie discussion, which I do think we have at least solved why that shit happened.
Thoroughly.
I am the kind of marathon player, when I hear Bungie fans or Destiny fans really who are like, I can't believe they killed Destiny 2 for this game. My only response is, I don't blame you. I'm not upset that people who are Destiny fans are pissed off, because I do think mismanagement on both Sony and Bungie's side, maybe one more than the other, is the reason why Destiny 2 is not continuing. However, I don't think that I understand why Marathon is a scapegoat. I don't think it's the reason. It's the scapegoat. It's not the reason. And that's fine. I get it, because I would be pissed too if I was like, wow, my live service game for the past decade is now gone, and now they're working on this shit. And I understand why, because it's an extraction shooter. They're trying to push forward whatever Sony will let them do. I get it. It's not everyone's bag.
Destiny is reductive. It
exactly.
is, and it's also ignoring the larger, more fundamental problems that actually are causing that, and that frankly,
exactly,
the executives at Bungie and Sony have actual real responsibility for the things that they did fuck up.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
It's funny because as someone who used to play League of Legends, I played some Riot games before. I know they have Valorant and all that. What their fighting game just got shut down like recently, 2XKO, whatever it's called. It's very funny because I recognize that, and I'm like, listen, I don't think Marathon has a big shelf life. I think it could shut down in the next 6 months, if not even sooner. It's totally possible. I like the game for what it is, but I'm not in it thinking, oh, it'll be around forever. No, it probably won't. But I also understand that the weird position that Bungie has put themselves in, plus what Sony has put them in, makes the game something that's probably not going to last very long. It's probably going to be something until Bungie comes out with another IP and they abandon Marathon entirely, and that's fine. But I'm also someone who I have literally played like 10 different games in the past like month and a half, like replaying old games that I have. So for me, those online games aren't the thing that really persists with me. I don't have my forever game. I don't play any MMOs long term like that. But I will say what they do with Marathon, at the very least, from a creative standpoint, because I love Bungie's creative team, I think is really good. I think it's a good game if you are willing to say, fuck it, I don't care about performance. I care about antics. I care about,
it's a fun game.
It is. Yeah. I had a game the other day where I was playing as a rook, which is basically like you have to play solo, you don't get teammates, and you basically you're a vulture. You're not actually doing anything. You are extrapolating other people's shit. I was playing as a vulture on the hardest map that you can get in without paying anything. And I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna go over broadcast chat and be like, hey, the extraction closes in 2 minutes. If y'all aren't fucking at one, get to one like now. I'm doing this as public service. And then a minute later, I'm like sprinting towards whatever is the closest one. And I just hear a regular team call it like, hey, Rook, you want to exfil with us? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. What? And they were like, yeah, no, it's chill. And I was like, holy shit. Are you sure? I was like, yeah. I was like, you could have just killed me for XP. I was like, I don't really give a shit. I'm not really here to do that.
See, that's good old fashioned fun, and I good on the devs for making a good game. I think their execs have done them a disservice, and what else is new? I guess is sort of the moral of the story. But
yeah, it's a specific type of game too. It's like I understand that it's like that story happens after 4 or 5 games of me getting killed in the first like minute. But I think the thing that they've done with the attraction
the
tutor,
fact that it's an exception means it's exceptional, right?
right?
That's
Exactly. It's one of those where it's like the stories that come out of the game. It's like why I play like Caves of Cud or stuff like Citizen Sleeper. Is like the stories that come out of it are great, and I think that's also kind of the nice part is there's been times where I've been like, it's not just like, oh, someone's shit talking me and I'm dying every game. It's like, no, there's people who are genuinely scared because they didn't know I showed up. And I can tell when they kill me because they'll say shit afterward, like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? And I'm like, oh, so it's very much like, the war films of like, they're doing it because they're like, I didn't kill you because I hate you. I killed you because I was scared to death I was going to lose my shit. And I'm like, oh, that actually kind of does reframe the game a little bit. But obviously, Marathon's a game that I don't play for like 8 hours at a time. I play it for like 2 hours, then I'm like, all right, I'm good. I've done my workout for the day. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, apparently Nate agrees. So
yeah. Also good work,
I
Nate.
agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
You'll
Also,
have to
loving
listen to the VOD and just catch up on everything.
Yeah.
I've been listening
right
the whole
now
time.
That's preem drip right there. The gun, the sword, the hammer on the back. You've got the tricorn.
I'm playing Cyberpunk.
Right.
Oh God, yeah. I love Cyberpunk.
All right. Well, we'll leave it here. Thank you both for your fascinating insights into the gaming industry.
Sorry for dominating a lot of that, but I'm glad we hashed that out.
I loved it. It was great. I can't wait to do it again. But we'll call it here for this week. Beat a boss, explored the woods, upgraded a lot of shit. I think it's a successful stream overall. Yeah, and then I'm gonna probably do some really dumb shit, jumping into the water or something next week. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I'm excited for that, actually.
Yeah, because I think that person pointing the scepter is onto something, unless I miss my guess.
Great if it's just it'd make me happy. Love that.
That'll be fine.
All right, then. We appreciate you all joining us now or in the future. And thank you both for basically carrying the conversation tonight.
You got it.
I thought extra hard about how not to die. Yeah.
No problem.
All right. We'll see you all in a week. Bye, everybody.
Later.
See ya.